Ever notice how ads always pop up at the worst moments? When the killer's identity is about to be revealed. During that perfect meditation flow. On Amazon Music, we believe in keeping you in the moment. That's why we've got millions of ad-free podcast episodes, so you can stay completely immersed in every story, every reveal, every breath. Download the Amazon Music app and start listening to your favorite podcasts ad-free, included with Prime.
Welcome to our paranormal afterlife. This is our paranormal afterlife, and I'm your host, Simon Bown. If you want to hear the extended version of this episode, please join the Patreon campaign. This week, I'm talking to Julie Ryan about her book, Angel Messages for Your Life's Journey. Julie is a psychic and medical intuitive. She is a businesswoman, an inventor, author, radio show host, podcaster, and a serial entrepreneur. Her surgical device inventions are sold globally, and she has founded 9 companies in 5 different industries. Hi, Julie. Thanks for coming back to the podcast.
My honor. You know, you're one of my favorite people on the planet. I tell you that every time I get to talk with you, whether you're on my show or I'm on your show or just on the side.
Yeah, it's always good to talk to you. So we're going to talk about your book that's called Angel Messages for Your Life's Journey. It's linked to something you do called Angelic Attendant Training. Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. I'm a businesswoman and an entrepreneur and an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world who learned how to do woo-woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness. So I didn't grow up with dead people chasing me, or if they were, I didn't know it. And so I learned how to do all of this woo-woo stuff. By the way, Simon, did you know that woo means source in Taoist philosophies, Taoist teaching?
No, I didn't know
I used woo-woo for years. And I have a friend who's a Taoist priest, and he goes, well, you know, woo means source. And I must be psychic or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have many people who listen to my show who are clients that have said over the years, can you teach me how to do all this stuff that you learned how to do? And I have hundreds of them, I think from 15 countries so far. The only requirement is you have to speak English, because I can speak a little Francais and a little Espanol, but primarily English. So people from all walks of life come, and we do it once a year online and once a year in person. And so the in-person one will be this fall, October 24th through the 26th in Atlanta, Georgia, here in the U.S., and that's the busiest airport in the world. So I figure people can get to Atlanta from anywhere. And then we have a free shuttle to the hotel. So I teach them how to do all the buffet of psychicness that I do, which includes being able to communicate with spirit, whether the spirit's attached to a body or not. I do most of the work that I do is healing related. And I'm like a human MRI. With permission, I can see inside people's bodies. I can see viral infections, bacterial infections, broken bones, torn ligaments, cancer, whatever, and then help facilitate healing, energetic healing. And the person always heals themselves, though. You know, every medical provider, every healer, every shaman, we're helping the person heal themselves. I can say more about that in a minute. We can scan your dog. We can talk to your pet. We can talk to any pet. We can talk to any tree. We can talk to any plant. We can talk to your deceased grandmother. We can do past life stuff, one of your favorite topics. We can talk to spirit guides and angels and any kind of entity. And we can tell how close to death somebody is in a series of events I call the 12 phases of transition. So when somebody comes to my training, they learn how to do all of that in a weekend, Simon, because it's about 10% technique and 90% transfer of energy at a really high vibration from me to my students. And it's a blast. It is so much fun.
Is it a thing where different people have different levels of talent? You know, some people can play the guitar and they're okay strumming chords, and then some people can play incredible classical pieces. Do you find with your students that there are different levels of talent?
I find that everybody has the ability. We're all born with it. Every child, they come in more advanced than the generation before them, not just in cognitive skills, but also in telepathic and intuitive skills. You know, babies just know stuff. My great nephews who are toddlers know how to work my iPhone and my iPad way better than I do. They're not even speaking in sentences yet. Well, how's that work? You know, that's on the physical side. On the spiritual side, I've written a series of children's books because I had so many moms and grandmothers over the years, Simon, that came to me and they said, can you explain how my child knows all this stuff about their deceased grandfather who died 20 years before this child was born? And this baby toddler talks about grandpa coming to play trains with him in his room at night. And he knows information about grandpa that there's no way he could know. And how does my grandson know this information about what he's saying was a past life? And you're the expert on past lives, but information that can be validated with historic documentation found online. And this kid doesn't read yet. And then what do you say to a child who says, you know, when they're saying, well, grandma's in heaven now with the angels and with God. And they say, no, she's not. She's asleep in that box up in the front of the room. You know, how do you explain that to them? So little children know this. And until they're told, oh, honey, that's just an imaginary friend. You know, your buddy Stanley isn't real. Well, Stanley is real. It's just that the grown-ups can't perceive Stanley. Furthermore, all of us in our adult lives have experienced most likely many times where we think of somebody and we run into them, or we get an email or a text or a phone call from them. And we say, oh my goodness, I was just thinking about you. And here you are. What a coincidence. There's no coincidence there. That's your intuition at play. So we all have the ability. When people come to my class, to answer your question, that was kind of a long roundabout way of answering your question. Everybody's skills develop with practice. Like you're an amazing guitarist, right? Well, when you first started playing, were you as good then as you are now?
Well, no, it was a lot of practice I did with bass guitar.
Yeah, and it's the same with this. The more you do it, the more validation you get. The more validation you get, the more you learn to trust it. And then it's just second nature. And that's why all of my trainings have practice groups that go on for forever, as long as I'm doing this work. And it's really where the skills ramp up. And again, it's that validation, you know, over and over again. Okay, that information I'm getting, yeah, that's validated. All right, let's do something else. And it's amazing to watch these people, Simon, they come in and they say, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this, but I'm really interested in it. And I'm hoping that I can. And then after practicing for a while, oh my gosh, they're amazing. So it's just a matter of developing and enhancing a skill that we already have.
And so they do that course with you, but then after that, you still keep in touch and you have Zoom meetings with everyone?
Well, no, there are 9 practice groups a week, and they're all free. They come with the training. And I've been teaching this training, I think, for 6 years now. I think this is group 24. It will be class 24 this fall. So 6 years worth of practice groups are all free for life. And then I do one once a month with anybody that wants to come. So the thing that's been so remarkable about how this is all unfolded, Simon, is people from all over the world have gotten very close to one another, you know, in the different practice groups. And you can go to as many as you want throughout the week. And they are scheduled for different time zones, to try and encompass different time zones around the world. But it's ended up being just an amazing support system. One of our graduates had brain cancer and it had metastasized, and she just suffered just a ridiculous amount and had multiple brain surgeries and on and on. So she decided to take what they call here in the US the death with dignity pill. She decided to end her own life. And she here, at least, I think 2 doctors have to sign off, and it's usually a terminal illness where the person doesn't have any hope of recovering. She decided to do that. Well, we got word of it on a Friday afternoon that she'd made that decision. And so there was an impromptu Zoom session that was set up for the following morning, maybe around noon Eastern. And we had over 50 people from all over the world there. And we had a wake for her, but she was present. And she got to hear how everybody loved her and how everybody, wished her well and how everybody really appreciated her and all of her involvement in the group. And then the next day, she died around noon, and her daughter let us know. And then that spread throughout the community as well. And one of the most remarkable things about that was one of my graduates does the EVP, the electronic voice phenomenon, where she'll tape just sound, and then oftentimes we can hear spirit's voice through them. So at the wake, somebody said, well, will you let us know when you get to heaven? And she said, sure. So I think she passed at noon Eastern. At 1:00 Eastern, my graduate did the EVP recording, and we could hear Lisa say, I made it, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
We heard that on the tape, but we heard it in her voice, in her accent. So that's the kind of support that comes with this training. And I found that it enhances people's lives in ways that are just unimaginable. They don't have a frame of reference for how amazing their lives become when they get involved with this work.
So when people get to that point, they're close to death, they have things like we call deathbed visions, where they start to see their deceased loved ones. So what do you think's happening there? Well, like right now, I couldn't do that. Perhaps 3 days before my death, I could do that. There's some thinning of the veil or something?
Yeah, I think that our resistance to our telepathic capabilities starts to wane at the end of life. People don't really care about a lot of things. Like they don't care about material things. They don't care about past hurts a lot of the times and things like that. They're transitioning. And that's what my book, Angelic Attendants, is all about. How we're surrounded by, I just have one right here. Yeah. How we're surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. And there's a configuration that I see and my graduates can perceive. And it's how we can see the angels and the spirits and the pets, how their positioning around the person who's dying changes as the person gets closer and closer to passing. And it's really remarkable how we can not only communicate with the person who's dying, but we can communicate with any of the spirits that are there as well. When somebody's dying, I always ask 3 questions. Are you ready to go? They'll tell me yes or no. And I'm doing this telepathically across continents in a lot of instances, and with people who are comatose, perhaps, that aren't verbally still active. And so, are you ready to go? They'll tell me yes or no. Are you in pain? Yes or no. What do you need? And what do you need ranges from, can I have some chocolate cake and vanilla ice cream, to I need you to, take care of this situation, and I need to change my will, or I need to, I need to see. One of my favorites is there was a Greek admiral who was dying in Athens, and he had had a brain tumor and wasn't able to communicate. So I was on the phone with his wife, and we were communicating with him telepathically, and I was telling her what phase of transition her husband was in. And his request was, I need to say goodbye to my sister. And so I said to his wife, he wants to say goodbye to his sister. Can you bring her over? Can you have her come over so he can say goodbye? Even though he was comatose, he wanted her there. And she said, well, no, because she's in Australia. And they were in Athens, Greece. And I said, well, get her on the Zoom or get her on on a FaceTime or something on the phone. They did later that afternoon, and he passed the next morning. The stories are amazing. I have a whole bunch of stories in my Angelic Attendants book, which, by the way, anybody that wants a free digital and audiobook version, just go to julieryangift.com and we'll send you one, julieryangift.com. Because I think this stuff should be taught in the schools. Everybody's afraid to die, and there's nothing to be afraid of.
Whether you're into just mascara and gloss or love playing with bold colors, we all have that one makeup essential. Mine? Thrive Cosmetics Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara. It gives the look of lash extensions without the glue or damage. The flake-free tubing formula defines from root to tip, no clumps or flakes, and comes off with warm water. It's vegan, cruelty-free, and gives back with every purchase. Beauty that works and makes a difference. Try your new trusty favorites with an exclusive set for our listeners. New customers can get the Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara and the mini-sized Brilliant Eye Brightener at a special set price with free shipping available at thrivecosmetics.com/beauty. Or save more with 20% off your first order at thrivecosmetics.com/beauty. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/beauty for 20% off your first order.
All right, quick break. Knock, knock. Who's there? Amazon Music. Amazon Music who? Amazon Music, where Prime members can listen to top comedy podcasts ad-free. No awkward interruptions, just nonstop laughs from your favorite shows. It's free, it's funny, and hey, it's better than my knock-knock jokes. Download the Amazon Music app and let the good times roll. Or go to amazon.com/ad-free comedy. That's amazon.com/ad-free comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Well, it's kind of you to give away the book. Was there an experience you had when your mother passed away that you saw things?
Yes, that's the first time I saw the 12 phases of transition, what I've come to call it. And that was in 2002. And Simon, I'd never been around anybody who was dying before. This was my first time. And we got a call, and she lived 10 hours from me and my husband and our family. So we drove through the night to get to her. And she wasn't really able to communicate much, like a, nod of the head or a yes or a no or something like that. And it was very sudden. It was very unexpected. So I turned on my radar. I'd just been studying this stuff for probably about 10 years at that point. And I thought, I'm just going to see if I could see anything energetically. And I turned my abilities on and off at will. And that's what I teach too. And so I saw these angels in the room, and I saw my grandmother's spirit and my grandfather's spirit and dog spirits that we'd had when we were kids that I hadn't thought of in a long time, and other deceased loved ones and friends who had been dead for 20, 30, 40 years. And I hadn't thought of them in that time. They were all present. And so it was the unfolding of that. And there are a couple of nuances. May I share them?
Oh, yeah.
That really, really amazed me. First of all, the spirit that runs the show really surprised me. It was my grandmother. And I've come to learn that it's always the maternal spirit closest to the person who's dying. So, for example, my mom's deceased. When I die, it will be her who comes to run the show. If she was still alive, it would be my maternal grandmother. If she was still alive, it would be her mother. It's always on the maternal line. I kind of thought God had maybe a, exit department for humans in heaven. And he would dispatch angels or something like, I'm going to send the death angel to you to help you die. No, that's not how it works. My perception of how it works. So it's the maternal spirit that shows up first. When somebody's adopted, it's the mother that raised them, who's the one that's running the show from the spirit world. She brings in the angels. She brings in the other spirits. So angels that come in looked to me like the angels are depicted in the paintings and statuary. Very big, big wings, white gown, bare feet, rope belt. Well, I went through 12 years of Catholic school, so that's what I was taught angels look like. Perhaps to somebody that grew up in an indigenous culture, maybe in the middle of the Amazon, they may see angel energy as just a blob of purple haze or something. Spirit's always going to show up to us in a way that we can understand it based on our human frame of reference. So these angels show up, and then the pets and all of that. The spirit exits through the top of the head, and it hangs on to the body, and it looks like a speech bubble in a cartoon.
Yeah.
And it stays there for all the 12 phases until the spirit and the body separate. And about phase 5, there are additional angels, 2 additional angels that show up on either side of the spirit bubble and just hang out there. And when I saw that with my mom, I thought, it's going to be interesting. I wonder what they're going to do. I knew they had a role to play. I just didn't know what it was going to be. And I felt like the Lady of Justice that we know here in America, where my heart was breaking on one side of the scale because my mother was dying. On the other side of the scale, I was watching this amazing experience unfold spiritually. And so it really helped balance, the heartbreak and the excitement with all the amazing things happening. So about phase 9, now out of 12 phases, so they're getting close at this point, the angels' wings on either side of the spirit bubble start to move. And they reminded me of a giant owl. If you've ever seen an owl fly, they're silent, their wings are smooth, they're rhythmic, they're kind of slow. And you can almost feel the drag that they create as they're flapping their wings. I'm watching these angels' wings move, Simon, and I thought, all right, this is going to be interesting. And what I noticed was the movement of the wings formed a vortex above my mother's head. And I could see it, I could feel it, and I could hear it. And it had an upward pull to it. It reminded me of going through the car wash when at the end they turn the dryer on and it sucks all the water, off your car. And I thought, okay. And so I knew it was going to help her spirit exit through her body. And then when I was writing Angelic Attendants, I was led to just do some research on owl wings vortex. Well, what I found out was there's this phenomenon in anything aeronautical called the wingtip vortex. And it's about these vortices that form underneath wings, whether it be a jet or a plane or a kite or a bird or a bug, and it causes lift. And I thought, oh, for heaven's sakes, I'm watching these angels create this vortex that's going to help my mom, evacuate her spirit through the vortex, and it causes lift. I'm watching something in the spirit world happening that I can see, feel, hear, and it's affecting her on the physical plane. And there are tens of thousands of aeronautical engineering drawings and articles and interviews and stuff like that about the wingtip vortex. Every pilot knows about it. I thought that was phenomenal. The other thing is that the spirit is carried off to heaven then by these 2 angels on either side of the vortex. Once it goes through the vortex, causes upward lift. And the other thing that's interesting from a human perspective about that I've realized from a physicist who told me this is, I always see it go up and to the right, spirit. And I thought, I don't know what that's all about. And I was given a talk one time, and this physicist came up to me afterwards, and he said, well, it makes total sense to me that the spirit goes up and to the right. I said, okay, please enlighten me. And he said, think about screwing a lid on a jar. When you're putting the lid on, you're screwing it you're screwing it clockwise to get it to go down. He said, when you're taking the lid off the jar, you screw it counterclockwise, and then you lift it off so it comes off and it's up to the right, because that motion is to the right, and then you lift it off. He said, that makes total sense to me. Okay, it does to me too. Couple other interesting points. Number one, there's a prayer said at the end of every Roman Catholic funeral called In Paradisum. In Latin, it means into paradise. And it talks about how your loved ones and the angels will greet you and lead you into paradise. I thought, okay, at my mom's funeral mass, I heard that prayer for the first time, really. I'd heard it many times before, but I really heard it. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's what I saw happen with her. So when I was writing Angelic Attendants, I looked it up and I thought, where'd that originate? And what I learned, Simon, is it began as a 5th century Gregorian chant. And so I thought, well, maybe it took till the 5th century till somebody was well educated enough that they could read and write. And certainly back then, some of the most learned people were men living in monasteries and synagogues. So I think there's a really good chance that people have been able to see these phases of transition since the beginning of time. And perhaps it took till the 5th century till somebody decided to write it down and make a Gregorian chant and a prayer about it. So it's really been a remarkable journey.
So with the book Angel Messages, which we're sort of supposed to be talking about, are there any stories in there? Well, there must be stories there that stand out to you, but is there one you could tell us?
Oh, yeah, lots of stories. Angel Messages for Your Life's Journey. That's this one. That's the newest book. That one is all stories that are spiritual, angelic, amazing stories by graduates of my Angelic Attendant Training class. And there are many stories that are in there that are just remarkable. One that comes to mind right off the top of my head was one of my graduates prays to St. Michael the Archangel a lot. And she has one of those cameras outside of her home and inside her home where it's videoed, and then she can go back and watch the video, just like a security camera kind of a thing. And one night she was going through a particularly tough emotional situation, and she prayed to Archangel Michael. And she was watching the video camera for some reason, the video that had been filmed the night before. And there was a cross made out of light that showed up on her camera on her back patio in the dark. And you could see it was a cross. And then she's also had a sword, just a sword in the form of light that shows up on her videos for her security camera. That's one. Many stories about seemingly serendipitous things happening where somebody will see an orb, in their room, and they'll take a picture of it and then they'll blow it up and it'll be the face of a loved one. They'll blow it up on their computer screen. They'll see the face of a loved one. Other ones are things about just having a feeling in, one graduate told me she was on a Paris train with her 2 little boys. They were visiting Paris. She lives in Illinois and Chicago. And she said there was just this overwhelming feeling that she needed to change cars on the train. And she thought, well, this is crazy. There's nothing going to happen. And then all of a sudden, she got up to move and she saw that there was a guy there and he had a knife in his hand. And so she and her little boys, got up, and she said, there was no reason for me to move. There were other people there. I mean, it was just something really off the wall. And there are many, many other stories in the book about things like that. And I think most of us have experienced what we thought were serendipitous or coincidental experiences. And yet, there's a spiritual component there if we really think about it.
I was interviewed for a podcast yesterday, and we were talking about feathers showing up, and it could be a sign of angels around. And I told her about this time these feathers showed up in weird ways. And in one of the events, I was talking to a medium about a feather showing up in a weird way. And then I went to see my daughter in her bedroom, and there was a feather in the middle of the floor. And where did that come from? It's so weird. So just when I was talking to that medium about feathers showing up in a weird way, a feather shows up in a weird way. So yesterday I talked about that on the podcast, and I went outside to see my wife in the garden, and there was this white feather right in front of me as I'm walking towards her. And it's almost like a little nudge, maybe, as you think, is it too much of a coincidence?
No, it's not a coincidence at all. No, that's your angels letting you know they're close by. I saw a feather this morning. I mentioned to you, we've been out of town for the past week, and I went downstairs in our lower level and looked out the window, and there was a feather laying there. I talked to a client a couple of days ago who told me that she's a chiropractor, and she said that her dad was her partner. He was a chiropractor as well, and he passed a few months ago. And she said she walked into the X-ray room and there was a dime on the table, just randomly. Nobody had been in there all day. It was early in the morning. And there was just a dime sitting in the middle of the table where the patient would lie to get X-rayed. And so we were talking with her dad's spirit, and he goes, yeah, I sent you a dime to let you know that I think you're a perfect 10. Like a perfect, person. And then she said she often has feathers that just show up on her chiropractic table, just out of the blue. And she said, I know my dad's sending them. I said, absolutely, he's sending them to let you know that he's close by. Spirit can manifest things that we see. And then what I suggest is it's that first thought that comes into your head. What was the first thought that came into your head when you saw that feather out in the garden yesterday?
Hello, Simon here. I conduct past life regression therapy sessions over Zoom, and these sessions can be very insightful and healing. If you go to my website, pastliveshypnosis.co.uk, you can book a free 20-minute consultation where we can discuss what it is you would like to achieve. You'll find the link to my website in the show notes. Oh, it was just the thought of, oh man, I've just been talking about this on a podcast.
Yeah. And maybe this is a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what do? We go into, it's just a coincidence. Our brain tries to talk ourselves out of it. And there's no reason to talk yourself out of it because it's that first thought that comes into your head. That's what you want to go with. Like, this feather's from my dad, or, this dime's from my deceased grandmother, or, spirit communicates in numerals, and numerals are decoded in our heads. So they use symbols, they use signs, they can manifest things. We'll get words, we'll get phrases, we'll get ideas, things like that. And then how we interpret that is when we decode that language coming in from spirit. And in your case, it was the feather that had manifested. I love that.
It's almost like sometimes there's a sign. So I saw the feather. Maybe it's a sign for something, but I don't know what the sign, what's the sign of what? What's the message?
Ask them. Ask. Hey, what am I supposed to know with this white feather?
I didn't think of that.
What I heard, you want to know what I heard as soon as I asked that question? You're doing God's work. That was a sign you're doing God's work. You'd had a conversation about finding feathers, about that being a spiritual thing. And then that was just validation for you. This morning, when I was getting dressed, I looked out the window and there was a dragonfly hovering outside of my window. So I looked up, all right, what's the dragonfly symbolize spiritually? And I got the connection between the spirit world and our human world. And I thought, well, yeah, I'm going to be talking to Simon here in a few minutes. We're going to be talking about woo-woo stuff. So those are all signs. Those are all, some people call them angel winks, God winks, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, they're all signs that are spiritual, that are just sent to us to let us know that they're supporting us. The spirit world is, and also to raise our vibrational level, because it's fun when you see those signs. You smile and it brings you to a place of curiosity, which is a high vibration. And then that helps you raise your vibrational level and helps you communicate with spirit more easily.
I wanted to ask you about a time, was it that you got a visit from Pope Clement?
Yeah, he's my main spirit guide. He showed up one day. I was with my mentor. This is about 10 years ago. And he showed up in his whole Pope outfit, the hat, the shepherd's rod, the whole 9 yards. And I don't know who he was. And so I asked, I said, well, who are you? And he said, I'm Clement. And I said, I never heard of a Pope Clement. He laughed and he said, I was number 6. I said, okay, great. How may I help you? And he said, you're supposed to teach the world what happens when somebody dies. And I said, yeah, I'm a businesswoman. People will think I'm nuts. I'm not doing that. Thanks for stopping by, kind of a thing. And he said, no. You know what happens, with your phases of transition and everything. He said, you know what happens. People are so afraid. You need to teach the world what's going on because there's nothing to be afraid of. It's been bastardized over the years. And again, I said, well, thank you so much, but I'm really just not interested in doing that. And I had like 3 companies at that time. I was a mom, I was a wife, I was running these companies, stuff like that. So I left my mentor's office after we were done. And just for kicks, Simon, in the car, I did an internet search on Pope Clement VI. Well, come to find out, this guy was in office during the Black Plague when 2/3 of Europe died. And he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead. And I thought, good heavens, Ryan, you can't make that up. And so it took me another several years till I got the golden ovary courage. Guys have brass balls and girls have golden ovaries. Courage to be able to put myself out there to get this information distributed. And really the final catalyst, and Clement kept showing up and going, yeah, you need to get on that. You need to start teaching people what happens. But I was at church one time and my son was on one side of me and my husband was on the other. And the priest from the altar during his sermon said, wouldn't it be amazing if somebody could really tell us if we're surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones as we're dying? And I'm getting elbowed from both sides, from my son and my husband. And I thought, really, God, you're giving me grief about this from the pulpit? And so that's when I really decided to put it out there and see what happened. And now, I give the book away for free. Thousands, tens of thousands of copies have been given away from people around the world. We have it in several different languages too. And it's just a matter of, like I mentioned earlier, I think this stuff should be taught in the schools. One other note about Clement that's really funny. A few years ago, Simon, I said to him, Clement, I know who you are. You don't have to wear the hat every time you show up. And he goes, no, but it looks good though, don't you think? I said, whatever. So spirit's hilarious. Have you found that to be the case too?
Yeah, spirit guides, I've found when I do a past life regression with someone, I take them into a space of light. I call it a spiritual space of light where we would meet with their spirit guide. And some of them do have a great sense of humor. And when I saw mine, when I was in a regression, they were dancing around. They were doing the Macarena and walking like an Egyptian. And it's almost like they're trying to say, it's not all seriousness and we're all very solemn in heaven. There's a lot of fun as well.
It's supposed to be fun. Absolutely. Because joy, all spirits are pure love and pure joy. So joy is a high vibration. When we're in a low vibration, when we feel badly, I always say it's harder for us to communicate with spirit because spirit doesn't communicate on the I feel crappy channels because the vibration's too low. They're communicating. It's just harder for us to receive that communication. It's like we're tuned to the classical music station or they're on the classical music station rather, and we're tuned to the country music station where somebody's whining about mama, the truck, and the dog, kind of a thing. It's not the same frequency. So it's harder for us to receive those messages. By the way, you are the ultimate master of past life regressions. For those who are listening that don't know this, I've never been regressed before. And of all the people on the planet that do this, I asked Simon to do it for me. And we did it on my Ask Julie Ryan show last summer. I'll have to get you what the episode number was, and you did it. So I had complete trust in you for the first time, and we filmed it, and it was remarkable. And so you are, in my book, you are the GOAT. You are the greatest of all times.
Thank you.
And the master at the past life regressions. Anybody listening, you want to do it, Simon's your guy.
Yeah, and it was quite a session as well, wasn't it? You were traveling the cosmos.
We were. I wanted to know where my healing interest started. Because I'm an inventor of surgical devices to help people heal. And some of my inventions have been sold for more than 30 years globally. And now most of the work that I do now, a big percentage of it is in the healing niche. And I wanted to know where that originated. We went to a star 500 billion light years away. I thought, what? That was wild.
So I wanted to ask you about prayers.
Yeah.
I've talked to people who've had near-death experiences who say while they're in that space of the afterlife, they have been able to sense prayers. They might see them as like a beam of light or something like that. What is it with prayers? You think it's positive energy or something?
I do. I think it's the same thing as meditation. You know, you'll hear about these global meditations for climate change or for peace and wherever, that kind of a thing. Prayer, meditation, it's all the same thing. And the interesting thing about that, Simon, that still fascinates me is I teach and I do what's called remote viewing. So when I'm scanning somebody energetically, it's like I'm a human MRI. I'm looking inside their body. That's remote viewing. I also can do it real time. And I do it a lot when a loved one is having surgery. So I'll be in touch with the family and I can see real time in the operating room, in the operating theater, as you guys call it. And I can tell you how many surgeons are in the room, how many techs. I can normally read the anesthesia equipment. I can tell you what their heart rate is, their blood pressure and all that jazz. And so when I'm scanning somebody in surgery, their guardian angel is always over the top of the head of the anesthesia person, whether it be a nurse or a doctor. There are surgeon spirits over the head of the actual surgeon or surgeons doing the procedure. And then there are deceased loved ones, spirits that are in the room. And they're kind of in a amphitheater configuration, like rows of U-shaped semicircles that are down at the foot of the operating room table, the OR table. When there's a lot of prayer being said for somebody, there are more spirits in the room. There's always a correlation. And so when I see a ton of spirits in the room, in the operating room, while somebody's having surgery, I'll say, is your mom on a prayer chain? And the family will say, yeah, about 15 of them. I'll say, great, I can tell. There's always a correlation. So yes, the answer to your question is all that positive energy of thought is being sent to that person to help them heal. It's really remarkable.
Before we started recording, we talked about you would do a reading for me, and we'd record it. And would you be able to tell us what the process is as you're doing it, or do you need to concentrate more?
Nah, I turn it on off in a nanosecond. I've done it kabillions of times. What do you want to? Do you want a medical thing? Do you want a past life? You want me to do a past life scan on you? We could do that. We could do, whatever you want. We could talk to a deceased loved one. What are you in the mood for?
It sounds like you've got a menu.
Yeah, it's my buffet of psychicness.
Oh, yeah. I suppose with a deceased loved one, although I have got a medical thing happening at the moment.
Well, let's do the medical thing because that's different from what we've been talking about. Can you tell me what your symptom is and then I'll describe let me describe how it works and then you can tell me what your symptom is. I raise my vibrational level to the level of spirit. This is what I teach because when we're attached to a body, we vibrate more slowly simply because the body has mass. I talk in analogies a lot, as you know, Simon, and I say, the frequency level, the vibrational level, when we're attached to a body is similar to trying to run an electrical current through a bowl of pudding. It's going to slow it down. So I raise my vibrational level to the level of spirit. I'm going to watch a laser beam in my mind's eye come from my body here in the southeast part of the US. It's going to hook into you in the UK. And then I'm going to have a hologram of you in my mind's eye. And I'm going to envision shooting energy from your feet up through the top of your head. And it will be as if I'm looking at an X-ray or a CT scan or an MRI. Something will be identified immediately thereafter. There will be some type of energetic healing that will begin. Now, that can take the form of something getting added, something getting removed. I watch procedures all the time that emulate what I saw in the operating room for all those years when I was designing devices, testing prototypes, things like that. Sometimes I see healings that utilize methodologies and devices that haven't been invented yet. And you may hear me say, oh, this is cool. I haven't seen this before. The whole time I'm describing to you what I'm seeing in my mind's eye because I want you to envision what I'm describing. That's going to help integrate the healing into your body because the body's going to follow what the brain shows it, even if the brain doesn't believe it to be true. Think of a time when you were watching a sad movie on TV and you found yourself getting a little teary or weepy and you thought, what? This is a movie and it's pretend, but here I am, getting weepy. Body's always going to follow what the brain tells it. So the healing will happen on the energetic level, Simon. It'll integrate into your body. That can happen instantly. It can take days, weeks, months. May need some kind of complementary care like change in diet, physical therapy, whatever. But certainly it's always our spirit's prerogative to utilize a healing in a way that best facilitates what our spirit's exploring in this lifetime. And as I mentioned before, nobody heals anybody else ever, 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 ever. You go to the emergency department at the hospital because you got a big cut in your leg and the doctor stitches it up. Well, the doctor don't make your skin grow back. You make your own skin grow back. So that's what all medical providers and healers do. So when I'm working with a client, what I'll do is I'll go in blind first and I'll see what shows up. We can do that with you. And what I'd like then is give me a symptom or two that you want me to check just from a time management standpoint. And then we'll reverse engineer it and find out what the cause is and do a healing on it.
Yeah, okay. So you're going to go in blind first?
Now, yeah. So what's a symptom? I go in blind first because sometimes things show up that are asymptomatic and we're heading off a problem at the pass. So once I have you on my radar, like if I've got a private client for an hour, and by the way, I have 5 graduates that work with me that do clients too, and you get in to see them really quickly and they're less expensive than I am and they're all amazing. I just go boom, 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 boom. Here are the symptoms, boom, 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 boom. We address each one. Something's identified, there's healings. It goes very fast. So symptom, you have a symptom you want me to check out?
I've got pain.
Okay, where's the pain?
It's in my right foot.
Right foot.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll check that out. But I'm going to go in blind first and see what I come up with. By the way, my analogies sometimes are really hilarious, Simon.
Oh.
So prepare yourself. I may tell you your pinky toe looks like whipped cream or something crazy, but that is just how the images come into my head from spirit. And I've learned over the years that they give me these images, number one, so that we can have a human frame of reference for the energy healing that's happening, but also, as we've talked before about, for us to have fun with it. So that's what's going on. All right, here comes my laser beam from Sweet Home, Alabama in the U.S., heading over to you in the U.K. All right, got you. Shooting energy from your feet up through the top of your head. It's going to your GI tract first, Simon. And then I'll go to your foot, I promise. But GI tract looks irritated. Are you having any GI issues like reflux or like the gastrointestinal from your esophagus down like your stomach? Or you having any kind of reflux or heartburn or stomach discomfort, gas, bloating, any of that kind of stuff?
No. When I swallow, it feels sore as it's going down sometimes.
Right. That's where the energy is primarily. That's what the healing's happening in your esophagus right now. It looks red and irritated. So there's this white energetic cream that's being applied inside your esophagus. And it looks like really thick face cream that maybe your wife or your mom or your grandmother used to use, at night. And so that's coating that to get it. You've got a little bit of a hiatal hernia. It's on the left side. And it looks like a little sore. So I'm watching the healing. I'm watching it get scooped out of the esophageal tissue. I'm watching a glob of stem cell energy go in where the divot is, where it was scooped out. Stem cell energy is the coolest stuff ever because it'll regenerate any body part we need. And I've watched it regenerate whole organs that show up on subsequent scans, and it freaks out the docs when that happens. It's hilarious. They'll say, how'd you grow a new kidney? Well, stem cell energy. Stem cell energy is a light amber colored gel, Simon. There's sparkles in it because it's woo-woo. Got to have sparkles. And it reminds me of this hair gel when I was a kid in the 60s and 70s called Dippity Doo. And they still sell it on Amazon. So there's that's in the divot, and there's a vortex spinning outside of your chest. And that centrifugal force is what transforms the stem cell energy into new body parts, whatever it is we need. So that's happening. And okay, coming down into your GI tract, into your stomach and your intestines. You got yeast overgrowth. So candida yeast overgrowth, and I'll be happy to tell you when we're done recording what you can do about that. But that's what's causing the pain in your esophagus. That's what's irritating your esophagus. So I'll be happy to go over that. Let's get to your foot. See, that's why I always go in blind first, because the most pressing issue is going to show up first. And it may be something that we are thinking, well, this is driving me nuts, but it's more of an issue than perhaps what you're going to. All right, going to your foot. Let me see what's happening with your foot. Okay, so your foot looks like it needs to be adjusted by a chiropractor or an osteopath. What I just watched happen was I watched it get adjusted. It looks like it's kind of twisted. It's a skeletal thing. What did you do? Did you sprain your foot or something? Did you step off a stairway weird, or what happened?
No, it's more my heel whacked on something. So it's the bone, I think, where my heel is.
All right. Well, the foot needed adjusting first. That's what I watched happen first. Let me see what's going on. So the ligaments, I think you stepped on something maybe, and your foot kind of twisted, because I'm watching the ligaments get straightened out. They were kind of tangled a little bit, kind of like you said you have a daughter. When she was little, and you shampooed her hair, did her hair ever get tangles in it? You had to put conditioner or cream rinse on it, to get it to be untangled. That's kind of what I see, where you can run your fingers through a little girl's hair, long hair, to kind of untangle it when you shampoo it. These analogies are crazy that come into my head, but they just obviously come in really fast. And it's spirit giving us a frame of reference for untangling those ligaments and stuff in your foot. All right, let me see your heel. I can see a bruise back there, but it doesn't look like it's it's not in the tissue. I'm looking in the bone. Did you step on something that you think, may have caused some trauma to your heel? Your heel looks a little inflamed, but not that much. I think your foot's out of alignment. I think go find a chiropractor or an osteopath and see what's going on with that. I'm really not seeing that much. I see a little bit of bruising, but it's itty bitty. Shouldn't be giving you tons of pain. I watched your ankle get adjusted just now. I'm watching your leg get adjusted from the knee down. So how long has it been hurting?
Say 3 days.
Okay. Yeah, I think you stepped on something. I'm looking at your plantar fascia, plantar fasciitis. And I'm looking at that. Maybe a little bit inflamed, but not a big deal. I think your foot needs to be adjusted, then I think it's going to go away.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not seeing any bone chips. I'm not seeing any fractures or.
You did a body scan.
I did.
Those are the two things that came up. So,
well, I'll do a scan. The GI stuff came up first, the gastrointestinal, especially in your esophagus. Your esophagus was really inflamed. Got that calmed down. Got that hiatal hernia worked on and healed. Again, the healing happens on the energetic level, and then it's going to integrate into your body. And that can happen instantly, can take days, weeks, months. I'll talk to you off camera about all the stuff you can do to help heal your esophagus. When I have a client, we'll do the healings. And a lot of times they'll be multiple, like, my foot hurts, my left knee hurts, I have tinnitus in my left ear, whatever. So something will be identified. There'll be a healing. I'll do another shot of energy. We'll go to your right knee. There'll be a healing. We'll go to your left ear. There'll be a healing. And then I always send a follow-up email with things that you can do on the physical side to help integrate the healing into the body. But I always go in blind first because I want to see what the most pressing issue is. And yours is your esophagus.
It's been great talking to you again. We were talking about angel messages for your life's journey. That's your new book. And people can get that on Amazon, can't they?
Yeah, anywhere. Yeah. And then if you want a free copy of Angelic Attendants, what happens as we transition from this life into the next, just go to julieryangift.com, julieryangift.com. And we'll send you the free digital and audiobook version. And we've got it in Spanish too. So, and other languages coming that we'll give you free downloads of that. Because we're all going to have loved ones who die. And we're going to be there ourselves one day. And so I find it's really helpful for people to understand what's happening. And it happens regardless, the 12 phases of transition, whether somebody dies instantly, like in the case of a homicide or suicide, or whether they die over a prolonged period of time.
And the course that you run, can people book that on your website?
Yes, Angelic Attendant Training. And my website is askjulieryan.com, askjulieryan.com. We're on all the social media at Ask Julie Ryan. My show is Ask Julie Ryan on all podcast networks. We release 4 shows a week,
wow,
interviews, and a call-in show on Thursday nights. People call in from all over the world, and I scan them like I did with you, or talk to their deceased loved ones, or find out what's wrong with their dog or whatever. And then also on YouTube, everything's at Ask Julie Ryan.
Fantastic. Well, again, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, my honor. Thanks for having me.
This week I was talking to Julie Ryan about her book, Angel Messages for Your Life's Journey. And if you want to hear the rest of this amazing interview, you can sign up to Patreon. The Patreon episodes are ad-free and are released 2 days before the free versions. And you can become a patron by going to patreon.com/Our Paranormal Afterlife, or click on the Patreon button on my homepage at pastliveshypnosis.co.uk. The links are in the show notes. And my book, titled Verified Near-Death Experiences, Proof of an Afterlife, is now available on Amazon, and you can get it on paperback, audiobook, or Kindle. And if you enjoy the podcast, please leave a review and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or via your favourite podcast app to make sure that you don't miss out on any episodes. And thanks for listening.